Yes. Ms. Parker's, Mr. Bowen,
Here.
Mr. Kane,
Here.
Mr. Chris,
Here.
and Mr. Knuckles. Here. There's a packet and water, sorry.
Not water. Thank you. Thank you. Number 3, scheduled business from last meeting, the minutes. Motion with the minutes approved from last meeting, December 15th, 2022.
I'll move to approve, they just need to spell everything right.
Which one's that?
Where it could, it got spelled with a Y instead of an A. Good enough, that matters.
I have a motion from Mr. King. Wait a second. Second.
I missed out, I don't know what we're looking on.
Well, motion on to approve the minutes from last meeting will be December 15th.
Yeah, second.
Second. Next up is update report from Public Safety Department's emergency risk management.
Thank you for letting me speak. First of all, I apologize, Mr. Kane. That was my bad. I took the minutes for Miss Joanne, and I'm not as talented at them as she is. So I'm still learning. I'll fix them next time if I get a chance to do that. For now, I won't be taking up much of your time. My presentation is going to be relatively short. The good news is it's relatively short because we didn't actually have too many out of the ordinary events that occurred during the past quarter. We did have, of course, the normal ones that the police and the fire do respond to on regular occasions, but nothing out of the ordinary. We did have the wind event, which isn't on here. The reason the wind event isn't on here is because although it caused a lot of damage throughout the city, as far as the city municipality goes, we actually had very little damage and none actually to even be brought to our insurance company. So there was some minor damage that was being repaired simply, so we didn't have to worry about that. But this minor event for the past quarter has allowed me to work with the city clerk's office to help support that. And we've also been able to assist a lot of our volunteer agencies with their grant processes and just doing a lot of community outreach as far as the emergency management side. But as far as the city incidents go, like I said, we had the winter storm, we had the school bus crash, and the point in time. I'll let you know what that one here is in a minute. The winter storm is during the last half of last year, we did have a lot of cold snaps that came in here. We were expecting a lot of snow. We actually didn't get hardly any snow. You probably noticed that, but we did get some significant cold. A lot of the Ministerial Alliance, they were able to house individuals in hotels. And some of that brought up some questions on what would happen if we had a longer cold snap or if we had significant power outages in town. So I am working with the Ministerial Alliance. Now, I have been working with them a while to try to create a shelter system. We've actually have a shelter committee started, and we have a weekly meetings, and our goal date is to have at least cooling and warming shelters up and running by July 1st. And once we get those up and running, they're trained by the Red Cross. We're going to get that upgraded to evacuation shelters. But once these cooling and warming shelters start, they'll pretty much be ready for evacuation shelters, just not officially. So during an emergency between those times, they'll still be available. We're going through the churches. We have spoken to the Eastern, and they'll be taking care of their own students, their own staff. And we have some city buildings that are going to be earmarked for those shelters. And the lessons learned, once again, we're going to be helping the shelters. Next one is going to be the school bus crash. I didn't directly participate in that. that happened outside the city limits. So Johnny Montiel was the one who handled the emergency manager section of that. Now, of course, the fire and police and sheriff all responded to that, and the response was wonderful. It was exactly what you would expect from our local first responders. They did a wonderful job, and there was a after action meeting within 2 days of that. I believe it happened on the 25th, and the meeting happened on the 27th, which was led by Chief Kathy. And during that meeting, there was a lot of room for improvement. There's always room for improvement in every instance. So there was a lot of plans on how to improve that, with call lists and certain responses and the proper people to call. Now, the good news is there wasn't any serious injuries. We had one minor who did end up going to Lubbock, and I believe they came back and are expected to do a full recovery. So we did luck out on that, and luck out. It was definitely an event that could have been much worse than it actually was. And then the point in time. The point in time is it's going to be a national homeless count census. Of course, they're a little bit more difficult to catch on an official on the 4-year census. So there's a national count that what they do is they pick one night out of the year. That night, I believe, was January 31st. It was 30th or 31st. It was a little confusion at the time, but it was the 31st. And we send out people into the community to speak with our homeless population, our displaced population, and say, where did you sleep on the night of the 31st? And based on that, whether or not they were homeless or were they simply displaced for that night, there's a survey that they filled out. Everybody in Roosevelt County who we asked were nice enough to fill out this survey. Some other counties had a little bit resistance. Our county was wonderful. All of our people volunteered to fill out the surveys. And we did use that as an opportunity to hand out supplies. We handed out backpacks people who needed it. We had food, blankets, and it was also another chance for community outreach to speak with these people. We did find out that officially through the survey, of course, we can't say we got 100% of everybody. We did set up survey sites. We sent out teams who went out every day for that week to speak to these people. And I believe that we had 20 people who were surveyed. And during that survey, it was stated that there's 26 people in Roosevelt County who is either considered homeless or displaced during that time. Based on those numbers, we're going to be able to get the county during various organizations, various agencies will be able to get increased funding for items like HUD or the food bank or anything that's going to support these displaced populations or people in need. So this helps our community by getting accurate numbers. Yes, sir.
What was the age in that population? The age of that?
There was no age limit. Once we actually spoke to the adults, and the adult, one of the questions on there was your household. How many people are in your household? There were 2 minors, I believe, who were, because one of the sites was to go out to the school systems. And I believe that 2 minors were identified through the school systems as being either displaced or homeless. And they were put in the survey. And I believe that the individual who actually got those numbers also tried to do a follow-up on these 2 people, tried to get them the assistance they needed. So, yeah, beyond the school, the survey also stated, how many minors do you have in your household? How many people of age between, I think there's big chunks like between 18 and 45, and then from 45 to that. So, right. Next quarter goals. I do have a couple others that are not on here. Of course, our next quarter is going to be our monsoon season. So we're going to be expecting thunderstorms, windstorms, hail, which the hail in the last couple of years has been pretty significant. Before that, it was more of a minor nuisance, but in the last couple of years has actually caused some serious damage in our community. It's caused some damage through the municipality where we had to do insurance claims on buildings. Of course, flooding. A couple of years ago, we had the flooding, the vehicle that had floated down towards the water plant. So we've had in the last couple of years more significant events during our monsoon season. So that's something we're gonna have to keep an eye out. Thunderstorms, and of course, always the possibility of tornadoes. So that's how we have to keep an eye out. Now, as far as the what we have in the upcoming. We'll go ahead. Of course, we're still be working with the shelter committee, hoping to get that up and running by the beginning of July. And we got some grants opportunities that we're still working out. I expected mitigation grant to be completed or to at least be approved by this quarter. They've bumped it, no official word. I believe they're going to be bumping it hopefully to the second quarter. And we're still working on that. And of course, various training opportunities. But like I said, I didn't want to take up too much of your time this time around, and I appreciate your opportunity to give me to speak. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Fire department.
Thank you, committee, for taking time out of your busy schedules to come and provide recommendations and support for us in public safety. As she brings up the slideshow, as always, it's our mission to be prepared and ready to serve our community and provide the highest quality service. As you know, the county and the city are still in ongoing negotiations to determine reimbursement for services outside the incorporated city limits. And taking from our 2022 annual report, there were 758 total calls, which was 21% of our total run volume. 552 were EMS and 216 were fire. It averages out to 64 calls per month at a total annual cost to the city of $378,100.80. The county currently reimburses the city just over $30,000 a year. Hopefully we can move further in the negotiations in the next months as we progress. This graph shows shift staffing, calls 24 hours, and turnover. As you can see, in 2022, we lost 16 personnel to turnover. As workload increases on an individual basis, turnover and burnout increase. It's a hard thing to combat these days with our staffing level, but we're working our best with the city and the finance department to try to make a correction in this. In 2022, our personnel averaged 4,104 total hours dedicated to the city, including their regularly scheduled hours, overtime and comp time earned, standby, holiday worked, and all that is just under double a 40-hour work week on average for each of our employees. In polling 5 of our previous employees that have gone on to other fire and EMS departments, they averaged about half the amount of overtime per year, and we're making more per hour. These next 2 slides just show some hiring ads from different departments across our state. Both Albuquerque and Los Alamos are offering a $15,000 paramedic sign-on bonus, and Los Alamos is offering a $7,500 firefighter sign-on bonus. Both of these agencies pick up more of the employee PERA costs and pay more per hour. Moving on to the next slide is Artesia and Eddy County. They also pick up more of the PERA cost, and as you can see, Artesia starting uncertified firefighters at $1,857 and Eddy County at $1,951. Which moves us into this little thing that I've been putting on Facebook every month. This one is actually for both months, January and February. We had 475 total EMS calls, 79 total fire calls. Within the city, 388 EMS calls and 56 fire calls. And then in the county, 85 EMS calls and 23 fire calls. As you can see, it's broken down by the percentage of calls per zone and the average response time per zone there as well. But right now, our average EMS response time is just under 5 minutes with an average fire response time of just under 6 minutes. This one's kind of interesting as far as just the statistics. The most common day and time for calls for an EMS call is Wednesday between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. and fire calls is Sunday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Calls by dispatch type, we had 44 motor vehicle collisions or accidents, 42 breathing problem calls, 39 falls, 39 lift assist, 22 cardiac calls on the EMS side. And on the fire side, of course, this time frame does include February 26th with the hurricane force winds. So we had 12 electric line problem calls, 10 grass fires, 9 smoke investigations, 5 structure fire calls. And then some of the highlights over the last 2 months, City of Portales first responders were honored as the January employees of the month. There were unfortunately 156 instances where multiple calls came in, overrunning our current response capability, causing potential delays in response and care to our community. We did have 14 personnel complete Wildland S-130-190. We currently have 4 personnel in paramedic class and 3 in EMT basic class, all through ENMU Roswell. We have 1 open position on paper, currently 2, but 1 on paper, with 11 personnel with 1 year or less experience. So with that open position, that's 12. That's half of our operational staff with 1 year or less experience. Our next new hire test is this Saturday, March 25th, and we currently have 2 applicants. Moving on to our current issues, we need to work towards safer staffing levels, which will help. And we also need to improve retention and recruitment. We need to continue in developing our employees and providing training so that we can get this next group EMT certified, AEMT certified, and firefighter 1 and 2 certified. Our equipment, we're still working on maintaining our high mileage and aging units, and we would like to institute a vehicle replacement plan. We're also having issues with fire inspections that we'll talk a little bit more about later. Some of the solutions that we've come up with as a department to improve retention and recruitment, we need to increase wages and or covering a portion of employee PERA costs. To decrease burnout, we would like to increase to safer staffing levels, help distribute that work a little bit better, and improve our response capability to decrease our community's risk. And then institute a vehicle replacement plan. It's set up on a 3-year rotation with a new ambulance purchased the first year and an ambulance purchased every 3 years, but every other ambulance purchase would be a remount. A new auxiliary response unit every 3 years, and then $50,000 that 3rd year for large EMS equipment such as cardiac monitors, ventilators, CPAP machines, automated chest compression devices based on the needs of the department at the time. Currently, a new ambulance is in the neighborhood of $270,000, an ambulance remounts about $170,000, and a new auxiliary unit on state contracts about $50,000. Unfortunately, we didn't receive any of the capital outlay funding, and we're still waiting on the awards for the vehicle purchase grant through the Department of Health. We did receive some congressional spending allocation, but unfortunately it was a very high match that the city wasn't able to afford for a fully equipped rescue engine. Moving on to fire inspections. As Chief Knuckles knows, this is an important part of what we do, but we currently have 16 inspections either in process or that need to be scheduled. We have several personnel that are inspection certified, but due to the increase in run volume and demand for service, we're unable to complete those inspections in a timely manner. So I'm asking for the committee's recommendation on what you would like me to present to council on how to move forward. We have many options, but unfortunately the fiscal side only allows for one option. If we were to hire a fire marshal, it would cost in the neighborhood of $80,000 with their benefits and salary and everything. Of course, my favorite option is to increase shift personnel so that we can use them to absorb some of the call volume and provide a higher quality service and allow more time for personnel to do it on their days off because they won't be tied up in overtime. The cheapest, most fiscally responsible option is to turn it over back to the state, which will cost $0, but it will increase wait times for businesses to get their inspection so that they can get their water turned on and get their business license. So I'll be glad to answer any questions about that so that I can get your recommendation.
Clovis no longer willing to do it as we started with there for a while.
I haven't reached out to them yet. That wasn't one of the options. I have visited with Chief Nolan, and they're as busy as we are and struggling keeping up with everything. Now, we are using them for the building inspections, but not the fire inspection side of it.
Okay.
Where does the fire marshal come from right now?
Right now, we don't have a fire marshal. We had to eliminate that position when we went to 8 personnel per shift to help absorb that.
They're coming out of.
They're coming out of Santa Fe. Yes, sir. Sorry.
6 others looking at the whole state.
Yes, sir.
There's not many.
There's not many.
So how many of your personnel are qualified for fire inspection?
I believe 6.
6 right now?
Yeah,
Is that Inspections 1 and 2?
just inspections 1.
Just 1?
Yes, sir.
What was that? Have they been to the formal classes for fire inspections, and there's 2 levels, 1 and 2, I believe there's a 3rd level.
There is a 3rd level.
Classification that you can get in that certification.
The ones do the school.
No, not any state building. This fire marshal prefers that they do those.
You guys are doing all right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're not doing a lot of it.
No, not at this time.
Yeah.
So now I got like 5 or 6 years of that show up.
So we had an agreement with them, that we expected all public schools in our jurisdiction that we revoted and redid this, agreement every year for years. And they allowed the university and all the public schools, as long as we had a qualified inspector such as Mike was at the time, the fire marshal. So once we lost that agreement, that JPA kind of goes out. And that's where they're at with that.
Sorry, guys.
Good morning.
This one is at 5:30. There was some confusion. I apologize.
I mean, ideally, the city would have enough revenue for us to have a fire marshal and add the positions that we would need to accommodate run volume. Unfortunately, that's not the case right now, and there are many cogs working.
What do you want?
What would I like? I would like to add positions per shift and add a fire marshal, but unfortunately, that's not fiscally possible at this time.
What would you want that's, could be?
Honestly, if I'm faced with add a fire marshal or add personnel or give raises to my personnel, I have to say, turn it over to the state and take care of our personnel that are responding to 911 calls.
Position out there.
If y'all are comfortable with that, I feel comfortable presenting that to council. I know that that's not the utmost desired thing by any means, but our priority has to be 911 and preparing our personnel to be ready for 911.
So, excuse me. In other words, every time we have a new business or anything here for Talent, they're gonna wait on the state before they can drive a nail. Basically, is what we're saying here.
There are things that they can do in that business before they just can't receive their business
Right, they
license.
can't operate.
Yeah,
Man, I've got a problem with that.
What's the normal waiting time?
right now we're at about 3 weeks to 4 weeks wait. We have 2 of our 6 that are active inspectors, that one is in paramedic school right now, so that hinders his availability.
They've got money talking.
The state told me that they were on a 2-week waiting period, but you have a better idea of having to deal with them. Because- Okay,
I haven't seen a state fire marshal in the school ever.
okay,
It's always been.
Okay.
away from the fire department.
We did rotate through there in County once with Bruce Dow from the state, he came down when they were somewhat reluctant to give it over to
Well, that
us,
was before my-
JPA, and,
I think for the last 10 years.
he
it's
came
always
down
been the fire
and
department.
he threw it, so.
And Donald, they do running it down.
yes, sir, he is. And like I said, I would love to have the resources to do it all. To have a training captain, a fire marshal, and enough staff to accommodate the run volume.
Well, from my experience, there's an inspection nearly every day.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's just the way it is,
Mhm.
and that's why we hired a fire marshal in the first place.
Yes, sir.
And nothing against what has been done since then, but I knew the city needed a fire marshal, and now we don't have one,
Yes, sir.
so.
And again, I would love to have one, but if I'm faced with give my guys a raise or add personnel per shift or not get a fire marshal, I'm between a rock and a hard place, and I have to take care of our current employees.
Yeah.
But I don't like the answer either. Now, this is something we could always build back towards, but as Chief Knuckles knows, it may not be easy to take over that authority having jurisdiction when the time comes.
When was the last JPA we had?
Probably 2 years ago.
I know it's been a while. I haven't seen one.
It happens every year we have.
Mhm.
I don't know what that-
COVID threw a huge wrench in all the state plans and slowed them down tremendously.
Well, it sounds like you're advertising me, chief.
I mean, like I said, I wish it was a different story, but I have to be honest with you and the council on what we need to do.
Can I ask a question, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Is there any type of state funding, fire funds or anything that would go toward that fire marshal position?
It can go towards training, but not the salary cost of the position. Not to mention our fire fund has been eat up with maintenance cost of ambulances and fire trucks this year, and we might get to roll over 5,000.
I think it's advertising. They're gonna have to state you. It's gonna be a timely manner and you guys are gonna get hammered over it. Because every business that opens is gonna wait about a month to get inspected.
I think we need to put that out to the public, hey, start that.
Well, and one thing I would like to do is anyone that we have scheduled up until the point council makes their final determination, we will still accommodate. I will make people available to get that done. And then we'll have okay, this date is when it goes to the state. Because we don't want to just pass it along the 16 list of businesses that need to be inspected. Now that may get them down here quicker if they know they can knock out 16 in a heartbeat. So I'll visit with them and see what's best for the businesses.
So of those 6 that you have certified. Any kind of overtime incentive you could give those guys?
I mean, they receive a monthly incentive for the certification.
Right.
And then when they do it off shift, they receive overtime. The problem is they're all tied up in overtime to maintain operations.
Sure.
And anytime they schedule inspection, multiple calls come in and it gets delayed and they have to defer and reschedule.
Do you do the inspections as they come in, or do you have like a certain day, like every?
We don't have one person that handles it. We have, like I said, 6 that are certified. Unfortunately, their work schedules and the run volume get in the way of inspections. And that's why the ideal solution is to have a fire marshal. But at the same time, looking at the fiscal responsibility as me as chief, I have to take care of those that are running 911 calls and try to provide support there first.
And the fire marshal, excuse me, the fire marshal is qualified for all 3 steps.
Normally, yeah.
Normally.
Yeah.
That they can do all 3
Yeah.
type inspections.
And again, Mayor, that's up to the state. They look at his qualifications. At that point, they say, yes, we can do a JPA agreement with Fort Dallas Fire Department and they can inspect public schools and so on and so forth. But they vet that fire marshal before the JPA ever goes in state.
Mhm.
No matter if he has fire 1, 2, 3, whatever he has,
Mhm.
qualifications. There's a lot more classes than just those.
Yeah.
As far as arson investigations and
Mhm.
so, they're truly vetted by the state.
What do you guys think? Right? It's- How many are you doing now?
We're
It's-
behind 16 right now that are either scheduled or in the process or need to be scheduled.
We have 16 people waiting for a business license.
Some of them are not waiting for a business license. Some of them are just businesses that have moved to a new building. But they have to have it to have their water turned on and so on.
The school will be inspected on a regular basis? They
We
definitely-
used to,
Mhm.
when we had the fire marshal here. But when it's a state fire marshal, you just, whenever they show up, they show up.
Yeah.
Didn't we do it every 2 years? Yeah, I think we did it every 2 years. Every 2 years. Yeah. Cause we did Eastern 1 year and then y'all the next, so we didn't have them all at one time. That has to do what it was. Like I said, I haven't seen anybody in a long time. But it's like the other district I've been in, that you show up maybe 5 years from now,
Mhm.
go through all your records. Right, and you'll check everything out.
So a business cannot operate and go forward until they have.
Well, I'm going to defer that to the city manager.
Yes, they can't not move forward until they have that inspection. We can do waivers. We did one for a business because they did not do the process correctly and they had a lot of
they bought a lot of food for their events to open. We can offer waivers, but if we offer a waiver to anybody else, we take that liability. If the building doesn't pass a fire inspection, and something happens, the city could be liable for approving the business to open.
Then they return the water.
Is correct.
So they.
They're not
say
supposed to.
3 weeks to a month.
You are correct.
Now, there have been waivers in the past where an inspector goes and does the preliminary, allows them to turn on the water so that they can clean and do such, and then does a follow-up. But that's situation dependent. Unfortunately, we're in a situation to where revenue is tight and we have to be very picky on and very responsible with the small revenue that we have.
Since we're on the fire marshal, what's happening with pre-fire planning?
Honestly, we haven't had any pre-fire plans done since Mike Inge was here,
Wow.
which if we were to do an ISO evaluation today would hurt us tremendously.
Big time.
Now we are working towards a phone dispatch app that if we show up to Portales High School, it shows us the pre-fire plan. It shows us where all the utilities are, the Knox box, everything. But it's going to take some time for those 6 inspectors to go and input all that information.
Sure.
Which will help our ISO score. It's just having personnel with the time availability. As I mentioned earlier, our personnel are tired. They're working more than double of a 40-hour work week in a very stressful job.
So if we were to go and turn it over to the state, would it be like from now on? Would it be temporary? Would it be?
Well, it would be until we built up to the point where we could approach the state and request to take it back over. Then they would evaluate the individual that we had in place and ensure they have the right certifications, the right qualifications to do those inspections.
Ultimately, the end goal should be. We need a fire marshal. When can we hire a fire?
Mhm.
2 years, 3 years, how long is it gonna take? That's how long the state's gonna have it until we get a fire marshal.
Mhm. And again, if I'm faced with the choice next year to add personnel so that we can accommodate run volume or hire a fire marshal, my choice is let's take care of our community, the general public, the 911 priority first.
Do we have anybody qualified to be a fire marshal?
We have 6 personnel with fire inspections 1. And fire inspections classes are less and less available. It would take us roughly a year if they were available to just drop that at any time to go to class. Unfortunately, we're so underexperienced and new as a fire department with an average experience level of just under 3 years that many people are busy getting their basic training classes, their EMT, intermediate, basic, fire 1 and 2, wildland classes.
So chief, if we turn over the fire marshal or the inspection to the state, would that free up some time for your personnel to maybe look at restarting pre-fire plan?
Potentially, the problem is, again, run volume and maintaining operations. Our training logs we haven't been able to do regular day-to-day training in almost 2 years, just due to run volume.
And my point is that you keep hitting on your personnel and kudos to you, take care of your people, but pre-fire plan take care of your people.
Yes, sir.
More than money does.
Mhm.
That's where I'm going with it.
To be honest, it just feels like we're just treading water and just trying to make it to the next call.
What do you make about 9 or 10 calls a day?
Right now, we're averaging just under 10 calls every 24 hours. Now, we have gotten a lot better with reporting because we have internet in the ambulances with CAD and tablets that are very beneficial in cutting down reporting time. But that's still new and we're still working through that process. We're hoping to see at least a 15-minute to 30-minute reduction. Is that just the wind? Yeah, but we're hoping for a significant reduction in reporting time that will open up more time for training and pre-fire planning and rest and nutrition.
Madam Chair, on the end of the turn over inspection to the state.
Okay, a motion has been made that we turn over the, or inspection over to the state.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you. I will make that recommendation to council at the next available meeting. Thank you. And I'll be glad to answer any other questions that you may have.
I do have one, Steve, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
I'm backing up here. What did you say the cost of a remount is now?
About $170,000.
Wow.
But that is with a new generator, new HVAC.
Okay, it's a
And-
it's a rebuild more than
Yes.
just a remount.
Yes, sir. We've seen a huge issue with the remounts that we've had with our aging generators and creating a tremendous expense
Oh, yeah,
long-term.
okay. And you're talking about purchasing on your proposed plan every 3 years an ambulance?
Yes, sir.
And then every third year, that unit would be remounted?
Every other purchase, a remount.
Every-
So we're still maintaining our existing fleet, getting to 5 ambulances response ready with having one in reserve
Right,
that can be brought out if we need it. So we're no longer having to borrow from volunteer departments to maintain operations. And then as units get phased out, we can sell those to volunteer departments as we did the old 803 to
Right.
provide that resource to departments that run 10, 25 calls a year.
yeah. And if you offer that on a vehicle purchase grant in your grant letter, they oftentimes are very favorable.
We will,
towards that.
we will see
Okay.
next month, chief.
They are.
Yes, sir.
So, okay, that gives me a better idea on.
Yes, sir.
the program. And how far are we along with that? I mean, do you have any proposals that,
I have a proposal prepared to present to finance when budget time hits,
okay,
as well as all the other solutions that I mentioned.
okay,
That lays it out for the next 30 years of, and that way we can have ambulances that are less than 100,000 miles and less than 15 years old. I mean, for goodness sakes, we have a 1978 engine at the airport right now. That's still a first new engine.
such a classic.
It should be a parade truck, and that is the plan if we can get funding.
Okay, well, thank you, Chief. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Okay, moving on to the next item, the police department.
Well, good evening, members of the Public Safety Committee. Thank you for having me this evening and allowing me to speak in front of you. For those who may not know me, my name is Amador Lujan. I am a captain with the Portales Police Department. I will be filling in for Chief of Police Chris Williams today. I won't be taking up too much of your time. There's only a few things that I'd like to discuss. Basically, just update y'all and brief on what we've been working on within the department in regards to public safety. We've recently had officers attend or 2 sergeants along with a patrol officer get certified for Alice instructor training, meaning they are certified to instruct and put on Alice classes, active shooter response classes. So they will be able to provide those services to the community to include churches, businesses, the schools, if they elect to utilize that option. Any government entity such as city government, so any city building, whether it be city hall, the public library or schools, if they go through this training, these instructors will actually be able to get them certified and they'll be recognized as Alice certified once the training has been completed. So that is something that we're currently working on. We are going to start putting out this information possibly this summer. Right now, we're just on standby and putting everything together and getting the equipment needed for the training. Equipment such as sim rounds, sim guns, masks because it's going to be an actual hands-on training. There is going to be a classroom portion of it, but the rest of it's going to be scenario based. So attendees will be going through actual scenarios and get a, I guess, more realistic feel for the class instead of just sitting there during the classroom time just by PowerPoint. We believe it'd be more beneficial if they actually have more of a hands-on going through scenarios type training. So that is something that we've been working on. We've also had officers recently, and when I say recently, this was just yesterday, it is that time of year where we're starting to get the heavy winds. We saw a few weeks ago, we had roofs flying off houses, buildings, churches. We had trampolines in the middle of the roadway all over town, trees getting knocked over. With that also comes the threat of tornadoes. So yesterday we had officers, mainly our supervisors with some officers attend a training over, it's a desktop disaster exercise. Basically, it just reminds everyone and gives them the refresher training needed to remind them of the 7 critical tasks in responding to a major disaster. Reminding them of what resources they have, what places around town, depending on where the disaster occurred, where they could utilize a staging areas, command posts, things of that nature. If people need to be evacuated, whether it be to Eastern Greyhound Arena or the county fairgrounds, things of that nature. And it also gives the opportunity for law enforcement agencies such as Eastern, the fire department, the SO to work together and get that same training and know basically everyone work together and be on the same page. So we did have that going on here recently. In regards to the speed enforcement cameras, I know that's a big issue right now. There has been a city ordinance that has been drafted up. It hasn't been finalized or anything right now. It is, I believe, with our city attorney for review. So just like anything, when it's under review, it may go back and forth a time or two until it is finally finalized. If finalized, it'll be presented to city council for approval and see how that goes. That's just something that we're hoping to get. Reason being is because we're working on minimum staff. We've had in the last month, just in the month of February, we took 1,161 calls for service, just the police department alone. With 2 or 3 officers responding to that many calls, takes away from traffic enforcement. So these cameras are something that can help with that, because we've all been here in Portales most of our lives, if not all of our lives. We clearly drive down these roads every day. We see that just the speed limit sign alone, we don't get compliance. So hopefully with the camera system, that can help alleviate, help us out when we're busy responding to calls of service. And it can actually get the city used to, okay, someone's always watching us. We have to obey the speed limit. So, yes,
I've
sir.
got a really quick question, maybe a stupid question, but I was driving down Third the other day from Gilmore to Abilene. I noticed the only speed posting sign on that street is 15 miles an hour when flashing in the school zone. How are we gonna add more signs when we put the cameras up? Or-
Yes, that is actually the ultimate goal right there with the money that we're gonna be getting from the cameras,
Okay.
is to buy the school zones. That's a big one, especially, the school zone on Abilene.
Got the Abilene, I couldn't tell you what the speed limit was.
It's not just posting speed limit or school zone signs on school zones that necessarily don't have the flashing lights. So we plan on replacing all of them, put the new fancy, the LED flashing lights, so they're really bright. We plan on doing that for the school zones. Plus, you got to think about other equipment that we can get too, as far as when we have, say, Heritage Days in the summer or in the fall when we have Safe Trick or Treat. With the funding from that we'll be getting, we'll be able to buy more traffic control devices such as temporary speed bumps that you could literally just lay out for the event. After the event's done, pick it right back up. So that's stuff that we can use for city events like that. That'll help us out with the traffic enforcement, slowing people down. So there's plenty of reasons of how not just the department will benefit, but also the community as well. So that's why we're really pushing for this to go through.
So there is a plan in place to look
Yes.
at those speed signs and make
Yes.
sure we have them posted.
Yes,
Cause if I get a ticket, I wanna see where's the speed limit. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I wanna ask you guys is where's the speed limit?
Yeah. understood.
And I will get one.
Well, and let's stay up in the air on how it's gonna be run. I mean, everybody speeds, technically everybody speeds, everybody drives 2, 3, 4, 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. Everyone does. I'm guilty of it as well. So there is gonna be that, for one, when it first starts, we're gonna give a grace period
Yeah.
for that first month or so, however long they decide for it to be. Once that starts, obviously, we're gonna advise the community of it. Basically reach out to the radio, Eastern New Mexico News, share it on every social media platform that we can. And then before the end of the grace period, again, do it again, just to give everybody a reminder, like, hey, it's about to start. Be a good idea to follow the speed limit. So Yeah, just different things like that. Just goes back to just helping us out at the same time. Like I said, we're working on minimum staff.
Right.
Can't be everywhere at once.
No.
Y'all see the speeders, y'all see the racers.
So-
It's an actual issue here in the city of Portales.
My last question is, who gets the ticket? The owner of the vehicle or the driver?
The registered owner of the vehicle, the citation will go to the owner of the
So if
vehicle.
my daughter's driving my truck and she gets a ticket, the points go on my driver's license?
Not necessarily. It's still being worked out. Again, the city ordinance hasn't been finalized yet. But right now, it's in the talks where basically the registered owner, if they were not driving the vehicle at the time of the infraction, there's gonna be, basically, they can appeal it. There's gonna be a document basically where they say this date and time didn't drive the vehicle, but so and so. They do have to say who was driving the vehicle.
Well, that's the biggest questions I've been getting is who gets the ticket because so many people share their.
Say if you have a vehicle that's registered to both you and your wife, it'll go both to the.
It's a civil penalty is what we're
Yes,
talking.
that's all it
about.
is.
Criminal anyway.
Not
There
at
won't
all.
be Points or anything.
No.
Then it's just a civil criminal penalty to your car.
It's just gonna be a city ordinance. It's gonna be no different than.
Doesn't matter
say-
who's driving.
And it
it's
doesn't
civil.
matter how fast they're going or anything?
I think they
Not
put it,
for this, it's civil. I think,
Wow.
you know, I don't think there's any way you can arrest anybody for it. With, you know, for speed.
like failure to pay the fine.
That's gonna be
And you
between the
gotta sue
courts
them, I
and
think.
that's gonna be between municipal court and.
So I honestly haven't got great feedback from the community on these speed cameras and Captain Luan, I agree with you. There's a lot of speeders out there. I mean, I work for the sheriff's office. I see it firsthand as well. But honestly, I haven't got great feedback about these cameras. It's only from the lady spoke to us, it's only gonna take a picture of the license plate and you speeding, not the driver. So how can you say who's driving? A lot of these Air Force guys, they don't register their vehicle where they're living at now, so that ticket's gonna be sent to where they don't pay for that bill, or they're gonna have a warrant out for their arrest for failure to pay fines. I think we should test the cameras first instead of going, the newspaper read that the council already approved it, which we have not. I think we should test it maybe on one street, not dive in buying 10 of these. I still haven't got a price on how much it's gonna cost. I believe Chief Williams just said the citations are gonna pay for the cameras, but never actually gave us a price on what it's gonna cost.
I was under the impression it photographed the driver as well.
No,
Well,
there's,
It doesn't.
No.
there's
wow.
no way it
And,
could.
and if I'm
You
correct.
gotta
there's
think
no
it's a
cost.
tinted window or.
It's all paid for through the tickets.
Yeah, so we're just gonna continue paying for it. It's never paid off.
Yeah, I think
Is that
that's the way it is. You know, and there's a fee for it, you know.
Yes, I believe there's like a 3 to 5 year
Put
contract,
it in
depending
for
on the
free and then
option.
they get the money for however long it is.
And obviously,
Portion, I
at
think
some
the
point,
it's part of it.
at some point, we are gonna gain that compliance, because people are gonna realize, okay, we can't be speeding no more.
I have a question. So are these units, like if we buy 10 and we put them in different locations throughout the community, are they set permanently at that location? Are we able to move them? Because I mean, if we know that there's gonna be one on Abilene, I will avoid Abilene.
Yes.
You can move them. Okay, okay. And see, I'm kind of the opposite. I've heard lots of good, positive feedback on it. They're like, okay, this is gonna be good.
It
Because we
benefits,
have people complain, oh my gosh, on First Street, they speed, on Second Street, they speed, or, over by the schools. And we only have so many, I mean, it's all about the money. All about the money in all our departments throughout the cities and schools and, I mean, everywhere, municipalities. So I think whatever we can do, and a lot of people were like, you know what, I mean, I don't know, I go by with what that thing says that we have in our old city hall, council chambers, do right and fear no man. I'm sorry. And yes, we do speed, but that's just gonna make us aware of like, you know what, I need to slow down.
Yeah.
So I've heard lots of good positive about it. So I don't know, it's just kind of.
From what Chief Williams said is we're gonna have to take an officer off the street to review those cameras and issue out those citations, right?
not necessarily, no, it just has to be any officer, so it can be it could be me, it could be
Yeah, that's
anybody
what-
within the office. It just has to be a certified police
Or-
officer to do it. So necessarily, we're not needing to pull somebody off, a patrol officer that's on duty working patrol that day. It can be anybody that's a certified peace officer. It could be the chief of police. It could be myself. It could be anybody that's certified. So as far as pulling away from the streets, that's not something that we look at doing.
One of my biggest concerns is
No, I agree. In fact, we're looking to see if, working the state's, traffic grants, see if officers can do it that way.
And if, say you, correct me if I'm wrong, my vehicle's not registered to where I live, you send that to me, if I don't pay it, I'm gonna have a warrant for my arrest for failure to pay fines.
That's something on the civil side that still needs to be figured out. I agree with you on that. Fortunately for us, we do have resources available to us where we can look up. Heck, I can find out your current email
Yeah.
address. I mean, we have the
That's just more
capability.
man time that,
You know,
should be,
I'm sorry, I know Albuquerque went through that deal, and it was all civil. And so I think if you didn't pay your ticket, they couldn't arrest you. They went after your credit, went
Yep, that
for your
does go to
credit and they went.
collections.
Albuquerque pulled all their cameras, didn't they? They didn't like it.
I think I don't think,
Oh, do
I think they're back in,
I'll be.
but it was all civil, so there was no arrest ever made out of this. And
I believe
and
it's
I think they
collections.
did collection agencies would go after you if you didn't pay. Or the city could sue them to get them to pay.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I believe it just depends on how the city sets up the ordinance.
Yes.
Yes, and like I
They
said,
set it up to where it is only civil, or they could set it up to where it is a criminal fine.
See, and I think,
But I don't believe that that's the desire of the police department.
Right.
Not to mention, this has the potential to generate some revenue to allow the police department to pay for units and training and provide them the revenue that they need to provide a higher quality service to the community.
How are we generating revenue when all the citations are paying for the cameras?
Only a
What I
portion.
only a portion.
only
Yeah.
a portion.
And those cameras are eventually paid off from what I understand. And then all of that comes back to the city.
Well,
Me personally, I think,
unfortunately, law enforcement, oh my gosh, law enforcement, I do wrong. I hit you and then a police officer comes and I'm mad at you because you are arresting me because I got caught for hitting. Do you know what I'm saying? So when I speed and I get caught and I get a ticket, I'm mad at the city or the cameras or the police department or whoever because I got caught. So, I mean, it's just this big circle. And those of you
See,
in law
I'm
enforcement
gonna-
that have worked with law enforcement totally know you're always the bad guy. It doesn't matter. It
And I
does
don't
not matter.
think you could ever make it criminal because you don't have the probable cause. You don't know who the driver was.
Exactly.
So I don't think you could ever make it a criminal,
And that answers my question. I mean,
because you don't know who the driver is.
yeah.
how many are y'all looking at getting?
10. We plan on putting some in the school zones, the one on Abilene. I want to say on Avenue C right there, the James, or not the James, but the Brown
Yeah.
Elementary, and then over on Globe for the Valencia school zone.
I personally think we should just test the waters with one on the busiest street and then see how it works out instead of diving in the deep end with 10 and then we're stuck. I'm assuming we have to sign a contract with this company.
Yes,
Yeah, that's my opinion.
yes, sir.
One quick story, Houston, a few years back, I have relatives down there that I visit. Did the cameras, the speed, the whole 9 yards. It increased their accident by 80%. Because you've got one guy who says, boy, I'm not getting a ticket. They're watching me. And another one who's going 90 miles an hour around him. And when you don't have all of the traffic moving at the same speed, you got a lot of trouble.
You say that was where was that again, sir? Houston?
Houston,
Yes, Houston is a more heavily traveled.
yeah, the traffic there is incredible.
I've driven through there several times and I don't enjoy that.
But they had a tremendous increase in their accidents, so they just pulled the cameras. It took them about 4 months to realize that this was not gonna work.
Well, I think at the end of the day on with us at the police department, we gotta try something. Okay, we're not getting officers to apply or people to apply to become police officers. We're shorthanded as it is. We recognize, I think everyone recognizes that speeding is an issue in the city of Portales. We gotta try something, at least. We can't just sit back and continue to let this go, especially when it's in the school zones.
Yes,
So,
definitely in the
We need to be
school.
preventive rather than reactive.
yes. And at the end of the day, I mean, we're still gonna get something out of it where it's not gonna cost the city anything. It's not, the city's no longer gonna have to worry about possibly buying us police units. They're not gonna have to worry about all this equipment that we're gonna get as far as the traffic signs, the school zone signs and all that. So there is a benefit to it. helps us out with the enforcement and it also benefits the community as well, so.
If you come up with an 11th camera, could I suggest a location?
Yes, sir.
At the hospital out by 18th and Commercial and Hospital. Traffic coming in off Highway 70 right there, and they're not obeying our speed limits.
No,
I come
I
in from
agree.
that way nearly every day and they pass me doing 75, 80 right at the hospital, you know.
No, I believe we actually had a pretty
Um,
severe car accident there
I've
last.
done
month.
2 fatalities at that intersection myself personally. Actually got the truck turning signs put up after the last fatality there. But it's not slowing traffic at all. There'll be more fatalities there, mark my word.
I agree. I think we worked a severe crash.
Well, the
there last
trucks
month.
are what are causing that because they're pulling out of the cheese plant and DFA and they're so slow. And these cars are going so fast, they're not anticipating that slow of a turn. And there's a mess right there. So, but they are going fast there.
Agreed.
Oh.
You'll have anything else for me?
Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this
Yes,
as
ma'am.
time goes.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, moving to item number B, discussion regarding city ordinances and how public safety is affected by said ordinances. Matter for further study. Is this something that,
And we're asking how it affects public safety? Is that our question?
Discussion regarding city ordinance.
Parts of it do.
is there any discussion on that with how our city ordinances are?
Do you have any city ordinances that affect that? If you were to, was there anything?
No, there's nothing.
No, no.
What was that added to the agenda? There is one that we're working on.
We're working on.
I've not heard that.
As far as, oh, no, that's it. Any number? Oh, fire code, but that's not.
Probate.
So. I'm sure there's no.
But
Being made to the ordinance, correct?
No.
I mean, there's no proposed change.
No.
being made to that.
That was on there because we were gonna try to adopt the new international fire code
Oh,
for fire inspections.
Okay,
And now with the recommendation from the committee that will go to, through me to the council is to turn it back to the state. It's. null and void.
okay. And I think, okay, very good. And thank you for that. And I think someone just asked whether any of our ordinances, how they relate to public safety and how they're affected. And I think this is something that we have discussed in the past for a long time. Our ordinances, whether, our ordinances are up to date. If they're outdated and we're not using them and they're not utilizing them and they're not abiding by them, then we need to look at them. So that's something completely different. But as far as public safety, within our community involving fire and police and emergency management, anything like that. So we want to kind of entwine those eventually to where our ordinances are meeting and working together with everything in our community. So,
and up to date.
and up to date. Yes,
Yeah.
and we're abiding and following them. So that's just another,
If I can just add to that.
yes, please.
I know that Kelly has been working on different ordinances, especially when it comes to planning and zoning. And I don't know if we have a plan in place for upgrading and updating ordinances, but that's something we're probably.
right, we want to put
Address.
together a committee.
Yeah.
To dive into that, but as you know,
For a couple people, and I think that that's something, Diane, we need to put on our next retreat schedule too.
Yes.
Ordinance, updates and upgrades.
But and one ordinance that we have that this is, and we have discussed this, I mean, clear back from Mayor Davis, I'm sure. But parking on the wrong side of the road, where you have to, I'm parked on the wrong side of the road and people are like, well, no, I'm fine. But you cross that double line